Hello and welcome to another Reaconteur video, and in today's video I will be ranking the best equipment and accessories in Deepwoken. I'm currently live on Twitch playing Pressure with fans, so join up and make sure to subscribe since only about 20% of the people watching right now are actually subscribed. Now let's get straight into it. Starting out in the 1 out of 10 category, we're going to be starting with the Con helmet. Since the only thing I care about is drip, obviously, because you can smelt things now, that's what this ranking is on. And the Con helmet is one of the ugliest pieces of absolute human garbage I've ever seen. It's brown, which is just an unfortunate color. It's got an ugly shape, and it stands out. This is getting a 1 out of 10, and this is probably the worst piece of drip in the entire game. Along with the Con helmet, getting a 1 out of 10 will be the Bulwark helm. Brown hood as well, because it's brown and ugly, and any ring that isn't comboed with an accenting color to complement your build. We all know how much I hate rings. Along with these is going the Royal Pathfinder for the PTSD I have from the Azure Flame Shadow Katana builds in the old Deepwoken. And finally, at 1 out of 10, we have the Golden Cape. This is negative aura. You look like a little kid wearing this, and it can only be pulled off with one of the other items, which I'll mention later in this list, which looks really good with this. Now, I did not mention the Bulwark helm, but I don't think I have to, because it is the ugliest thing in this game and is probably potentially worse than the Con helmet depending on what the build is. Everything in this little category is absolutely disgusting, and I better never see you using any of this. All the stuff tied with a 1.5 out of 10. We have the Legate helm, which is just absolutely awful. This thing is disgusting. Don't wear this. Any of the Guards Kabuto, the Royal Guards Kabuto, the Guards Kabuto, the Black Guards Kabuto, they're all disgusting. The shape is terrible. They look awful in every build. The Gold Leaf helm is also a 1.5 out of 10. This thing is basically just a somewhat better-ish version of the Con helmet, and that's only because it looks a little bit cooler, but it's still disgusting and terrible, being a terrible color. And the Phalanx helmet. Most of the helmets in this game just really aren't good. I would never recommend wearing any of these if you want to win the 1,000 Robux prizes from my drip contest. And also, quick shout out to my YouTube members Kenix Jake, Cyberboy21, Drizzy Drake Fan. Buy YouTube memberships if you want to hear me make monthly song covers, or if you want to get a shout out. Anyway, at the 2 out of 10 drip spot, we first of all have the normal blindfold, which the normal blindfold just has no real reason to exist when every other blindfold looks better than it. And then there's also the Vigil Cowl. Both of these are kind of bad pieces of white equipment, but the shape and aesthetic of both of them is better than the previous ones, with the Cowl's Cape adding a decent silhouette to your build. However, the blindfold is just a worse version of every other blindfold, so it doesn't work in anything, unless you want to make specifically a white blindfolded build with like Blind Seer. But even then, it really doesn't work because it's not a pure white. It's like a washed out bandagey yellowish white. Like, it's a white with a weird hue in it, and that just makes it so much worse. At 2 out of 10, we also have the Iron Mask and Demon Mask. The Iron Mask could honestly go lower, but it's not bad enough to outright lose you points, I feel. And the Demon Mask just looks really, really dumb most of the time. The Miner's Hard Hat is also a solid 2 out of 10. It can work in builds that are meant to look like a miner. That's about it. But if it's highly situational, it's not really good, now is it? In our 3 out of 10 spot, we have the Headband. The Headband can work in some hero aesthetic type builds, but generally it isn't used well, and it's orange, one of my least favorite colors. Along with the hero's headband, we have the Hive Lord Mask. If it weren't so yellow, you could make a case for it, but the ugly color makes it bad in nearly every build. And along with the headband and the Hive Lord's Mask, we have the Grand Pathfinder's Backpack. It can work in specifically scavenger or adventure looking drip builds, but overall it's too niche to be good ever. And along with this, in the 3 out of 10, we have the Glass Dancer wraps. Honestly, these just don't work with anything. I used to wear them back before transmogrifying and smelting existed, or at least before people actually smelted things. But it used to be pretty good because it would have like 22 health on it, but they just aren't good drip. And the Revel's headband is also a 3 out of 10 for basically the exact same reasons as the orange headband, except it's red, so it's slightly better in base. At 4 out of 10, we have the Iron Singer Heavy Plate. This is just kind of mid. It can be dyed to better colors, but it's too bulky to really look good or combo with anything, so it's just bad. At the very least, it's not awful and can stand alone decently though. Also at 4 out of 10, I will put the Hive Scourge Cuirass. Honestly, I could move this down just for the color. This thing is disgustingly ugly, being a swampy green while also being too bulky to combo well with other stuff. Editing Reaconteur here, but I am so sorry I didn't put this back sooner. Why did I put this high? This thing's like a 2 or a 3 out of 10. Move it down at least a fucking point, because this thing is garbage. It does not deserve to be in this spot. Move this down to a 2 out of 10. The Hive Scourge Cuirass is disgusting. I'm also going to be putting these Sandrunner wraps in the 4 out of 10 category because they're a weird color, but they can work with like desert camo colors. The only problem is that the only place desert camo would work in Deepwoken is like the Starswept Isle, and nobody's ever in the Starswept Isle or Great Hive Aratel, so it's not aesthetically pleasing when most of Deepwoken is forest. The Black Parka and Black Overcoat, which are basically the same thing, are also going to be 4 out of 10s. They can work on some builds, but shorter coats are generally worse stripped than the longer ones, just for the fact that they're shorter and provide a worse silhouette. At the 5 out of 10, this is going to be everything that is average and acceptable to see in your builds. Everything below this can work, but I really wouldn't recommend using any of it. Not special, but everything in the 5 out of 10 is fine. And starting at the 5 out of 10 will be the stock Starduster. It's a decent coat, but it's really nothing special, so it fits right into the 5 out of 10 category. The Assassin's Cloak and Royal Pathfinder will also land their ways in the 5 out of 10. The Royal Pathfinder and any coat that isn't open loses points since you lose drip possibility with your under armor. If the coat could be opened, it would probably be like a 6, maybe a 5.5, but right now it's going to be a 5. And the Assassin's Cloak is just insanely mid. It makes sense since it's really old, but if you want a white cloak, just dye something or use a better option. And also, basically all the glasses are going into this tier since they're all pretty similar. They're unoffensive and they're decent, but they're never really going to carry your build, so every piece of glass that goes onto your eyes and face is a 5 out of 10. And we also have all the colored blindfolds because they're simply better than the normal one. The Aristocrat coat is also going to be a 5 out of 10 for simply being mid. I used to like it, but now there's just way better options, and this thing is kind of outdated. The Investigator's hat is also a 5 out of 10 for just being simple. It can work in like Chicago-style detective builds, but it's quite mid on most builds. And the double-strapped hat is also a 5 out of 10. It's basically the same as the Investigator's hat, but I personally like it just a little bit more, so I'd actually raise it a little bit. But it's decent. It's closer to a 5.5, honestly, but it's just mid. At 6, we start with the Old World Sun Pendant. This thing has some weird conflicting colors, but it can work since you can use it to accent gold and red with things like a blindfold or a ring if done properly, which none of you do it properly. Also, pretty much all the scarves land at a 6 out of 10. Some of the color schemes are a bit more situational, but they can all work pretty well in any given build if you match the color right. We also have the Authority Commander coat landing at a 6 out of 10. It's alright, and it being open gives it some extra points. If it were closed, it'd be like a 4, but it's still just a bit too bulky to be much higher than it currently is. We also have the Etrian Siege Cuirass, much better than the other cuirass just because it's a better, more neutral color, meaning it can work with more things since it's gray. And I actually use this on one of my builds, and the drip works. Also, at 6, we have the Megalodont coat. The varied colors are nice, and while it can work for more complex color patterns, there are better options which I'll cover later. The Familiar Priest helm, it's the worst out of the Rogue Lineage helmets in my opinion. The Church Knight helmet is just kinda ugly. The shape is kinda awkward looking, the gray is more washed out to white than the Sigil helm, making it less versatile, and it's just not great. Honestly, it could go lower, but I feel like the nostalgia from Rogue Lineage is preventing me from moving it down to a 5 or a 4. The regular top hat is also a 6 out of 10. It can work, but usually it's the same copy-paste 1900s detective look with the aristocrat coat and the guns. You know, it's the same thing every time. The feather top helm is also at the 6 out of 10 rating. It's nice, but it really only works with like a fencer style drip build, which is just kind of mid in my opinion as a whole. And starting out at 7 out of 10, and I kind of hate to put this here, but it would be the Monastery Champion's robes. This is a good piece when color balanced right with things that complement it, but the problem is most people simply can't color balance with it properly. You have to incorporate red, gold, purple, and hints of dark blue, and I've pretty much only seen it pulled off once. And at 7, I also put the currently unreleased Inquisitor's Duster. Pretty much only no-go in the devs have this thing right now, but it is quite nice, and I can't wait to see what people are going to do with it in the drip competitions when I start hosting those again after Conquest comes out. Also at 7 out of 10, we have the Celtor Commander's Helm. I've never seen a bad outfit with this, but it's always just different neon colored visor and black build. And yeah, it looks good, but it's become quite overused at this point, so it's kind of like the Dior Sauvage of helmets. That being said, Dior Sauvage is still pretty good, and so is this helmet. Next at 7 out of 10, the Dark Owl Chapeau is a great hat which works with more feminine black builds. I really like it, and I think it's one of the better hats in the game, but it's kind of upsetting when everyone that wears it is a femboy. Next up is the Ministry Operative Coat, which is also like a 7 out of 10, being decently nice and fitting well while providing an extra layer to your black build and providing an extra silhouette that just looks pretty nice. Starting out the 8 out of 10 category, we have the Mushroom costume. The Scroom is absolute drip. The Glow Scroom, especially with neon blue lighter builds, I love the Mushroom costume, and all of them work in some way. The red Scroom can go with red or black builds. The green Scroom can not. No, just don't use the green Scroom. I don't like that one. But the metal Scroom is also pretty good, and it can work with grayer or darker builds. Overall, really good. Anyway, along with the Mushroom costume on 8, we have the Heretic and Sigil Knight helmet, or the Sigil Knight and Dark Sigil helm from Rogue Lineage. I love both of these. They also both work really well on most things. The Dark Sigil helm works extremely well on black builds, and the Sigil helm works on pretty much anything else flawlessly, as long as your build isn't like green or yellow, in which case your drip has worse problems to be worrying about than its helmet, because it's ass. Regardless, the Justicar Defender is also going to be an 8 out of 10. It's really good at mixing colors because of the complex color scheme and patterns, and you're really able to get creative when using this. This might just be the undisputed GOAT of the coat game. Next up is the Duelist Mask, which is also going to be a solid 8. It can look really good on white builds, but sometimes it looks a bit like you're kind of trying too hard to be edgy and cool while wearing all white. Honestly, I'd be fine with moving this down to a 7, maybe even like a 6.5, but I'd put it up here because most of the builds I see with it are really good. Into our 9 out of 10s, firstly we have the War Master's Medallion. This thing is basically an iced out chain in Deepwoken, and I personally would throw it on any build just to flex the ice. The thing is just absolutely flex. The Bloodforged Crown is very situational, but whenever it works well in a build, it's absolutely peak. And Smith's Bandana will be going into the 9 out of 10 category as well, because if you wear this, I know you wavy as hell. And also in the 9 out of 10 category is going to be the Hallowtide Pumpkin. This thing, like the Scream costume, is sadly a Halloween exclusive, but it should be coming back rather soon, so it's not that bad. I do really like the Hallowtide Pumpkin though, and I've seen some really good orange builds with this, like orange, green, purple, like Halloween themed builds, and those are always really nice. And that's saying something, because I really don't like the color orange. And finally, we're in the 10 out of 10s. There is only one item in the 10 out of 10 category, and it is the absolute best item accessory in the entire game. Completely undisputed, but sadly, it is kind of unobtainable to most people. And as previously mentioned, it is the only item that goes well with the Golden Hero's cape. The one and only Moderator Cap.